Greetings, Pokefans! Michael here, and obviously I have played a lot of Pokemon. So therefore, over the years, I have had a lot of different playthrough teams. But despite that, there are still several Pokemon out there that I personally like a lot, yet have never used on any of my playthrough teams in any game. I thought it would be fun to share some of those Pokemon with you, so today I will be going over 5 Pokemon I have never used, but want to, or at least wish I could. For clarification purposes, a playthrough team is the squad of Pokemon that I use up to and during my first defeat of the Pokemon League. So don't forget to leave a like on the video, and let's get started with number 1, Lanturn. Lanturn is such a good looking Pokemon to me. I think it has an excellent balance of looking strong, but also looking cute, but not so cute that it looks like a baby. I think the best word to describe its design is, I guess, tasteful. It just looks like a well-designed Pokemon. I also love its mask. You know, the different color around its eyes. I think ever since I saw The Incredibles as a kid, I've really liked that design aspect, whether it's on a Pokemon or a superhero. So Lanturn having one is obviously extra points. Also, I love its typing. Water is a pretty solid type, and electric is my favorite type. So combining these two powerful elemental types together makes for a fantastic combination. At least when it's not a washing machine. Also, a fun extra bonus of Lanturn is that it is blue and yellow, which is my channel's color scheme, so that's fun. However, despite my love of Lanturn, I have never used it on a playthrough team. And the primary reason for that is the accessibility of Chinchou. Now, when I say its accessibility, I don't mean the number of games that it's available in. In fact, Chinchou has been available in every single main series game since its introduction in Gen 2, except for Fire Red and Leaf Green. Also, it was not available in Colosseum and XD, and I mention those because I am including my teams for those games in my pool of Pokemon that I have used before. When I talk about Chinchou's accessibility, I'm talking about how easy it is to get and how early in the game you can get it. In the Johto games, you cannot get one until you have the Good Rod, which you cannot obtain until Olivine City. In the Hoenn games, you cannot get it until you can dive, which you cannot do until you have 7 gym badges. In the Sinnoh games, you cannot get it until you have the Super Rod, which you cannot obtain until post-game. The Unova games have a similar issue, since while there are not unique types of fishing rod in them, you do not get that singular fishing rod until beating the league. The only 2 regions where Chinchou is obtainable reasonably early on are Kalos and Alola. In Kalos, you can obtain it once you have the Good Rod, which is obtained not long after you get your 3rd gym badge. In Alola, you can obtain it as soon as you get to the route where it's available, since you already have the fishing rod by the time you get there. That being Route 8 shortly after you complete the Fire Trial. Even for the games where it was obtainable at an early point, I oftentimes still had a water or electric type already. Especially, like I said, water type. It's necessary for HMs, it's a possible starter type, and they're just everywhere. It's really easy to get a good water type early on in most games. Also, one thing I should note because it's important for the rest of the video is that whenever I play through a new region for the first time, my team always consists of brand new Pokemon only. So therefore, the only time I would have used a Lanturn was in Gen 2, but my first Pokemon game was Gen 3, so I kinda missed my chance to have it as a brand new Pokemon on my team. Plus, you have to go out of your way to find a Chinchou, since the only way of finding one is either by fishing or by diving, neither of which are mandatory in any areas where Chinchou is. You have to fish during the water trial in Alola, and you have to dive to get to the seafloor cavern in Hoenn, but Chinchou isn't located in either of those places. Therefore, it's entirely possible and somewhat likely that if you weren't trying to complete the Pokédex, you could have just played through the game completely missing Chinchou, which I often did. Another reason I haven't used Lanturn, especially as I've gotten older, is that it simply is not very impressive in the battle department. Its base stat total is only 460, with every stat being meh at best except for its HP. Now, while stats don't make as much of a difference in a playthrough as they do in competitive battling, it's still something that I can't help but think about because I have the knowledge of it. But despite all of that, I still want to go through the effort of having a Lanturn on my team at some point. Maybe it'll show up early in a randomizer or something, but even if it doesn't, I still want to use one because it's just such a good looking Pokemon. Number 2 is Kingdra. Kingdra is another Johto water type Pokemon that I think looks pretty solid. I'll admit I don't love Kingdra's appearance because while I think it looks good, I don't think it looks amazing. What I really like about Kingdra is its water dragon typing. That is just such a cool and interesting typing that is pretty good in battle. However, I've never used a Kingdra on my team because it is very difficult to get. In the Kanto, Sinnoh, and Unova games, it is not available until post-game, due to either Horsea or the Dragon Scale not being available until after you beat the league. Heck, in Let's Go, Kingdra's not even in there at all. In the Johto games, Horsea is first available in the Whirl Islands, which requires you to clear the Team Rocket headquarters and beat Price to gain access to, since you need the Whirlpool HM. This is kinda late in the game. In the Hoenn games, Horsea requires the Super Rod, which as I mentioned earlier, is not available until you reach Moss Deep City pretty late in the game. In the Alola games, it requires Island Scan in Kala'i Bay, a completely optional feature being used in a completely optional area. The only games where it's not too difficult to obtain are the Kalos games, in which you get access to it at the same time you get access to Chinchou, once you get the Good Rod in Coumarine City. However, while Horsea is easy to get in X and Y, the Dragon Scale is not. You either have to farm Horsea and use Thief on it or catch all of them until you find one holding a Dragon Scale, and there's only a 5% chance of that happening, or you have to wait until you get to Terminus Cave, a location you don't get access to until you have 7 gym badges and have defeated Team Flare. So in short, the main reason I haven't used a Kingdra is that it's either impractical or it's a heck of a lot of work. And like I said with Lanturn, because it's a water type, that means I have a lot of other options of water types to use that are much easier to obtain. But nevertheless, I still think Kingdra is a really cool Pokemon, and at some point, I want to make it work. Number 3 is Donphan. I've always had a bit of fondness for Donphan. I don't absolutely love it, but I think its unique design of being a tire elephant is really interesting and unique. Plus, I love the armor on its body, and I enjoyed watching Ash's kick butt in the anime. But oh my god, it is simply impractical to use a Donphan in virtually every game that it's available in, which isn't even that many to begin with. It is either not available until post-game or not available at all in the Kanto, Sinnoh, Unova, Kalos, and Alola games. That leaves only the Johto and the Hoenn games plus XD. In the Johto games, Phanpy is a version exclusive, which of course makes it less accessible. In addition to that, in most Johto games, it's only available on Route 45, a route you do not gain access to until you have reached Blackthorn City, the final gym town. The one exception is in Crystal version, where on Route 46, the route that you have immediate access to that is a dead end, you can find Phanpy at level 2. However, it only has a 5% encounter rate and only is found in the morning, so your chances of finding it if you aren't intentionally seeking it out are very low. In the Hoenn games, you can find either Phanpy or Donphan in the Safari Zone, depending on whether you're playing Gen 3 or Gen 6. They are found in Area 4 both times, and in Generation 3, you must have the Acro Bike to get there. The Safari Zone is accessible once you have 5 badges, since you can skip Winona if you want, but you do have to journey through several routes to get there. So it's not early, but it's not egregiously late. XD is probably the game in which a Phanpy is the easiest to get, being found in the wild at Pokespots. However, the problem that arises here is that you don't want one! It sucks! Just look at Donphan's level up moveset in the Generation 3 games. It is entirely normal type attacks, plus rollout, until you reach level 49, at which point it finally learns a decent stab move. Considering that TMs broke back then, so it wouldn't be easy to fix its moveset, using one of these would stink. Donphan's moveset has been better since Generation 4, but that means that the only place you can get it at a reasonable time with a decent moveset is the Safari Zone in Oris. And even then, the best matchups for a ground type in the game are already over with, except for Steven. So it's just not gonna be something that you're probably gonna wanna go out of your way to get. So while I do like Donphan, it simply hasn't been possible or practical for me to use one up to now. That's why I'm holding out hope that it gets a Galar form, because Donphan is a Pokemon I've wanted to get a regional variant for quite some time. So if it got a cool new Galar form in Sword and Shield, there's a pretty solid chance I would pick it up. Before we move on to the next entry, it's time for a fun new segment I'm tentatively calling Pack Attack. I thought it'd be fun that if once per video I opened a pack of Pokemon cards just to see if I get anything cool. I would always do the most recent set, so today would be a pack of Unified Minds. So yeah, Energy, Recycle Energy, Breloom, Komala, Magmar, Cottony, Snorunt, Tynamo, Meditite, Salandit is the reverse, and Abomasnow. Okay, nothing cool in this pack, unfortunately. But yeah, that was just an idea I had and wanted to test it out, so let me know in the comments if you want to see more. Number 4 is Ludicolo. Ludicolo is a Pokemon that my fondness for has increased substantially in recent years. Its happy-go-lucky and constantly dancing personality has really grown on me a lot. Plus, I associate it with the Mirror Beat music from Pokemon Coliseum, which, if you didn't know, is the background music for most of my videos nowadays. So that's one of the reasons why I haven't used Ludicolo before. I only started to like it within recent years. However, there are actually 2 other reasons as well. The first of which is its accessibility. The only games that this evolutionary line can be obtained within before beating the Pokemon League are the Hoenn games. But even within those, it's a version exclusive, only being found in Sapphire, Emerald, and Alpha Sapphire. So while I have played through Hoenn many a time, half of those playthroughs don't work for this because they were in Ruby or Omega Ruby, so Lotad wasn't an option. But despite that, I've still done several Hoenn playthroughs where I could have used it on my team, but I didn't. That leads us to the final reason why I've yet to use a Ludicolo. It's typing. Water Grass is a unique and interesting typing that is pretty solid in battle. However, a lot of the times in the context of a playthrough, it ends up being impractical because it overlaps with 2 of the 3 starter types. In other words, if I chose Mudkip or Trico, the latter of which evolves into my favorite Pokemon of all time, and therefore I tend to choose it a lot, that means that Ludicolo wasn't a practical team member option because I already had a water or a grass type. Therefore, the only situation in which I could practically use a Ludicolo would be if I started with Torchic and was playing through Sapphire, Alpha Sapphire, or Emerald. And that is simply a scenario that hasn't played out for me yet. But like I said, I have a fondness for Ludicolo and I really want to use it. Maybe it'll get a Galar form in Sword and Shield, or maybe I'll do a Hoenn playthrough where I do decide to set it up in such a way that I do get to have a Ludicolo. Although, that probably wouldn't be for a while, because I'm actually about to finish a playthrough of Hoenn using only a cast form, so I'm not super keen on playing through Hoenn in the near future. And finally, number 5 is Golurk. I have always thought that Golurk was a really cool Pokemon. It's basically a giant robot, but it's not just your run-of-the-mill metal robot. It's a creative, ancient robot with huge fists that just crush things, and whenever I see a Golurk, I always think of this epic and badass fan art of it based on Pacific Rim, a movie that I am wildly entertained by every time I see it. Plus, it can fly. It is an ancient robot that can fly. That is so cool. Additionally, I really love its shiny form. It's actually one of my top 5 favorite shinies of all of them. Also, have you seen how it looks in Detective Pikachu? There is no way you could dislike this Pokemon if you know that that is what it would look like if it was real. However, I have never used it in a playthrough team because it's not easy to do so. First off, it's a Generation 5 Pokemon, so it's a small pool of games to begin with, and then even in those games, most of the time, it's hard to get. In Black and White, you cannot find a Golett until you reach Dragon Spiral Tower, an area that you do not gain access to until Osiris City, the 7th gym town, which is pretty late. In Black 2 and White 2, it's even worse, since Dragon Spiral Tower is a post-game area. The soonest you can get a member of the evolutionary line is the victory road. In all of my Unova playthroughs, I've already had either a ground or ghost type on my team already that I wasn't keen on replacing. In Alola, the only way to get a Golett is if it is SOS called in during a battle in the Haina Desert, and this is only in Ultra Sun. While I could have used one on my team during my first Ultra Sun playthrough and went to the trouble of doing SOS battles in the desert, I had already decided on using Garchomp for my ground type instead of Golurk. Dragon simply seemed like a better secondary typing than Ghost, because I already had a Dark type on my team, and against the two types that Dark and Ghost are strong against, Dark is superior, because it's immune to Psychic and not weak to Ghost. The only games in which it can be obtained easily are, surprise, X and Y, because Kalos had basically every Pokemon ever. You can find a Golett on Route 10, the route immediately after the second gym town, that being Sillage City. However, despite that, I never used a Golurk in any of my 3 Kalos playthroughs, and that was for a different reason each time. In my first playthrough of X, I was dead set on only using new Generation 6 Pokemon, so that didn't apply to Golurk. In my first playthrough of Y, I was dead set on using a Mega Gengar, so I didn't want a Golurk. And in my most recent playthrough of Y on my Twitch, I already had a Honedge on my team that I intended to make an Aegislash, so another Ghost type didn't make sense. So unfortunately, Golurk has never been the right option at the right time. However, based on the trailers, it seems like Golurk might be somewhat easily accessible in the wild area. We'll see. But if it is easily accessible, there's a pretty solid chance I'll try to use it on a playthrough team. Probably not my first, because like I said, I plan to only use new Gen 8 Pokemon, but maybe it'll work out for a subsequent playthrough. So there we have it. Those were 5 Pokemon that I like a lot, but have never used on a playthrough team. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know if you enjoyed this video. I originally planned to make it 10 Pokemon, but I cut it down to 5 since it was getting too long. So if this one does well, I might do a video with the second group of 5. Also, let me know your thoughts on the pack attack, and if you enjoyed this video and want to see some more of my fun Pokemon content, I recommend this video here. Alright, that's all I have for now, so until next time, you fans, gotta catch them all!